Happy Saturday, everybody. So, Medical Properties Trust, everybody's favorite medical REIT, reported their financial results before the market on the 8th, then had the conference call at 11 a.m. Eastern. And as some of you saw, the stock cratered massively pre-market on the press release. And then during the conference call, it recovered quite a bit. In fact, they were up on the day that day and gave back a little bit of the gain on Friday. So, what was it that led to this massive movement in price down and then up? Well, I'll go over some of the points that I think were interesting from both the press release and the earnings call. Just some things that I found interesting. It certainly won't be comprehensive. This is meant to be kind of just a brief summary of some of the points that I personally found interesting. If you want more details, I did have the conference call live streamed on the channel. It's split into two parts because my internet went out 15 minutes into the call and I had to kind of find the place where we left off and sort of restart from there. So it's a little bit over an hour worth of streaming, and it's part 1 and 2. It's very clearly labeled, but this is for those of you who don't have the hour plus. So I think in the press release that this line was probably what sent the stock downwards, because MPT renegotiated some things with their lender, and they had, as part of that agreement, agreed to limit the cash component of their quarterly dividend to 8 cents per share per quarter. But this is something that they kind of did optionally. And in the event that Steward's hospital operations get transitioned to other operators more rapidly, the company can terminate it earlier than September of next year. So basically, this is like a 1-year kind of thing where they've agreed to do this until September of next year, pending Steward getting resolved. And that's kind of probably what they're thinking is on the long end of that whole situation. Because as you've seen, there continue to be kind of these delays and such in court with different parties trying to gum up the works just to, claw back what they can or to look out for their own self-interest in the case of the people representing Steward. So that kind of makes sense, and this does not preclude the possibility that they keep the dividend at current levels on paper, but the other portion maybe gets paid as a stock dividend. They mentioned a stock dividend earlier in the year, and they specifically, with their wording on this, said it was the cash portion that's limited to 8 cents. Now, they may decide not to do the stock dividend and just pay the 8 cents. I mean, actually, this is a limit. It could be less. But if Steward resolves, it could be more. But at the moment, my expectation would be to get 8 cents per share per quarter, with the potential possibility of stock issuance for some other small amount. But I don't really care too much one way or the other. The dividend is not the primary reason I'm in. I know a lot of people really care about the dividend, and this is always a question I get, so I wanted to make sure I went over this line, because I think this is what really caused the market to react crazy pre-market. And this was the other thing. Now, this actually wasn't really that new as far as news for those of us that have been following the Steward bankruptcy pretty carefully. So they impaired their portion of the equity in the joint venture with Macquarie in Massachusetts, basically because they've essentially agreed to surrender the properties to the lender, Apollo. Now, that's interesting because obviously amongst Steward's properties, the Massachusetts ones are they were the worst ones that had the highest likelihood of a really bad outcome. And in those properties, somebody else was carrying half the risk, Macquarie, and So in a sense, they made out pretty well with that being the case. And of the people in my Discord have been saying that Fast Eddie really got one over on Macari with getting them to take on half of the risk on the Massachusetts hospitals. So that's kind of funny, but it is an impairment. It's not really what you want to see necessarily, but it's also worth noting that the other Steward hospitals in places like Florida are a lot more desirable and represent a much larger potential value. So the Massachusetts situation is a complete debacle. No two ways about it. It sucks. It's terrible. I hate it. But at the end of the day, somebody else took half the hit, essentially. So there's that, at least. Consolation. And then, of course, the $163 million negative fair market value adjustment to the PHP. That's Prospect Health, their physician network, basically. So this is the other thing we've been discussing, because they've been marketing that asset for a while. And we think maybe if they're taking a haircut on this, what does that mean for the value of the Stewardship Physician Network? Because that's been one of the biggest unknowns in the Steward bankruptcy. So does the equivalent business in Prospect taking a haircut on value potentially also mean that there's less value in Stewardship than maybe what we were hoping for? That's an important question. We should be seeing something on Stewardship soonish. I'm told that there's a important date regarding that, I think on Tuesday, but you could always join the Discord in the description and maybe find out. There's people discussing it there all the time, releasing all the new articles and information from all the dockets. There's so many documents and everything coming out on this to sort through. It would be very, very difficult for one person to find all of the important nuggets. So I definitely encourage, if you're deep in this stock, to come on and get a little bit of free help with your due diligence. All right, so valuation wise, we're at still 45% of book value on this stock. Whether you think book value over or under represents the actual value, this of course a matter of opinion, but still really an unusually low valuation for a stock like this. But we also had, before we go, the Norwood situation got discussed on the call. One of the analysts actually asked this question. It was a great question. So what happened was there was a hospital in the Steward portfolio. Obviously, MPW owns the real estate. Steward owned the operations. It got flooded and water damage everywhere, just kind of destroyed basically the whole thing. And the insurance company tried to categorize this as flood damage. And there's this idea of like, what is surface water and what is flooding. And a bunch of the water that actually damaged the hospital came in through the roof, and they tried to call that flood water or surface water. And it basically hits a different lower cap on what the insurance has to pay, because the policy says, on flooding, we only cover X amount. The judge seemed to disagree with the insurance company's interpretation of that clause in the policy. So it seems that MPW and Steward will each get a lot more money from the insurance payout than previously was anticipated, which the part that goes to Steward will indirectly benefit MPW as their DIP financier and one of their major creditors. Also on the call, a lot more confidence was apparent, just in like the tone of their voices and stuff like that. And catalysts we have coming up include, of course, some important dates with Stewardship, and also possibly in a few weeks, maybe something happens with interest rates. And I think a lot of these things could be catalysts for the stock price to start to approach fair value once again. Remember also, we are having an MPW investor roundtable to discuss both today's earnings and any developments that come up on the Steward situation or any other press releases or anything that just happens to come out before then. The 17th, Cashflow Kings Live YouTube channel. Make sure that you are subscribed to that. We go live every Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern. MPW is, of course, one of our favorite stocks to hold discussions on, since there seems to always be so much happening with it, and it's so volatile, and it's a fan favorite, we'll say. Also, make sure that you are commenting below with your thoughts and opinions on this. And feel free, once again, join the Discord. Link is in the description. And if you've made it this far, I want to encourage you to like the video for the algorithm. Subscribe to the channel to help me grow my audience. I'm really trying to get to 3K in record time. Also, I'm trying to get to 500, my first 500 followers on Twitter. I'm a little more than halfway there, at Mr. Macho Mog, link in the description. It's not strictly all about investing, although I do talk about investing because it's one of many things I love. And hey, if you want to support the channel directly, you can consider becoming a channel member. I always definitely appreciate that. In any case, have a wonderful weekend. Maybe see you on the live on Cashflow Kings. Hopefully this summary was helpful. If it was, let me know.